Hey y'all! Well, today I'm going to do a video after coming back from Axpona, and I feel like I have some clarity about the direction that I want to take this channel, my business, and some other things after seeing kind of the totality of the audio industry at this biggest show of the year. And I know some things have changed in the channel starting this year. Some of y'all have commented about, they see the channel kind of going in a different direction from the, super budget, let's try to do things as inexpensively as possible, to using some higher end stuff and kind of heading more in that kind of direction. And I think that's just a consequence of my journey in audio. I mean, this journey started 5 or so years ago with some RP600M $300 clip speakers, a Yamaha CD deck that at the time I thought was a stretch, spending $350 on, and a little Noop Sound 6P1 $200 tube amp off Amazon. And yeah, did some mods on that, got that little setup sounding as good as I could, but that's far from like as great as audio can sound. But it was enough to really get me interested in diving into this deeper. And of course, then we built my 6SQ7 EL34 amp and the 6BM8 and all these other amps. We finally did a 300B, and we did a KT88, we did the Blue Glow amp, we did, all this stuff kind of leading up to where I am now, and incrementally was getting better and better sound. And then I discovered those fine F500 speakers and went, whoa, I was really missing something with these little $300 on sale clip speakers. And then found those Quad S2s, and another jump forward. And some may question how big these leaps are, but when you hear something better, it's hard to unhear it. And the same was true when I heard a really good reel-to-reel tape deck. And that's why I focused on my vinyl setup for so long. And some folks would say that I've spent a ridiculous amount of money getting my vinyl playback at the level it's at. And one of the things that people don't take into consideration is the things that I've bought that I don't listen to and the money spent on that. Some of the stuff it's hard to recoup any money out of. When you buy a new phono cartridge, when you put it on the used market, people want to pay about 30% of what it was new. And to me, I would rather just keep it than sell it for that much of a loss, because at some point in the future, that part might have synergy with something else I'm doing. An example of that is I bought a Denon 301 or a 103R or something. I think it was a 301. And I wasn't real crazy about the way it sounded in my current setup, but who knows, in the future, that might be gold. And it might be that, hey, if you change the cantilever and the stylus to something else, then it really does sound good. And so, all that said, part of this journey, unfortunately, is spending money and trying stuff. And one of the things I try to do on this channel is steer y'all like, here's what I've tried and I didn't like and I did like, and that maybe can help you avoid buying things like I did that aren't or don't have synergy together. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, one of my goals with this show was to try to elevate my digital source to be at least as good as or close to as good as my vinyl setup is. And I hear you guys that said, hey, you spent $1,000 on your digital setup and you're expecting it to sound as good as the $5,000 or so that you've spent on your vinyl setup. And they've got a point. By the time you add up my phono stage, $1,000. Step up transformers, buying those used on eBay with the little box is about $1,000 to $1,200. Got an $800 cartridge. Got a $1,000 turntable. I think that turntable is now $1,500. And so, as you can see, I've invested more time and energy into that than I have my digital. And so, I felt I was at a place where it was time to really step up and listen carefully to the different digital sources that are at the show and try to make a determination on what sounded good to me. And one of the best sounding rooms, made my top 5 down at the Tampa show, was the Rotel Mishi room. And they were highlighting their new top-loading Q5 CD Transport Plus DAC, which is a differentiation between a CD DAC. And they do make a lower tier CD DAC, a more traditional one, but it's got a vastly different power supply. And talking to the folks at Rotel, this was an exercise in telling the engineers, cost is no object. Don't try to hit a price point. The price point's going to be whatever it is. Just build the best CD DAC or CD Transport Plus DAC that you can. And one of the nice things about this unit I bought, which is the Rotel Mishi Q5, is that you can use it as a CD transport in case in the future you find some DAC that you like better. But the more important thing is that you can also use the DAC that's inside this. It has USB, optical, and coax inputs. It doesn't have I2S, which I'm kind of glad I'm getting away from that. Honestly, that really wasn't a jump in quality that I was led to believe it would be. And so I really feel like this is kind of a future-proofed purchase. And the other thing that I really like is that it's not a combination of boxes. We've got CD DAC and a world-class DAC in the same box, and you're not choosing cables to put between them and playing that game. You just put the CD in it, and fully differential balanced comes out. And that's another key thing. I'm finding out that there's some of these XLR jacks on consumer products aren't really fully differential outputs. And I'll get into that in a minute, why that's important. So, yes, I bought this retail price, depending on where you look, it's $7,000 or $7,500 CD DAC. And I'm sure some of you people are going to be like, that's ridiculous to spend that kind of money on a CD player. But I've heard it twice. And the show at Axpona, and I'll follow up with the streamer that they were using. They were initially setting this up with a pretty high-end streamer into a Mishi amp with some monitor audio speakers. And, they were like, yeah, it sounded good. We were all ready to go. They said the representatives from Rotel came down to the room, and they were like, you've got this top-end DAC CD combo sitting here, but it's not even hooked up. And they were like, yeah, we're just, displaying it. And they were like, why aren't you using the DAC inside of it? And so they hooked the streamer up to bypass the internal DAC and use the DAC in this Q5 transport DAC unit. And they said they were blown away with the clearly audible improvement in the quality using the DAC inside this thing. And after playing around with power supplies in my amps, and y'all probably remember that one video I did where I changed that one filter capacitor in my 300B amp, and it just massively changed the sound of it. I believe strongly that main difference in all these DACs isn't the chipset being used, it's the power supply and the implementation of the chips. And this unit spared no expense. It's got dual toroidal transformers, it's got separate power supplies for the analog and the digital side, all that kind of stuff, and that's why it's producing the sound, and none of that stuff's cheap. That's where they're going to save money on building a product, is in the power supply. That's the big expense. Big toroidal transformers are expensive. Big caps and all that filtering and all that kind of stuff, it's expensive. I mean, some of my amps, I have a dual rail power supply for that reason, but those are the expensive amps. And so I'm excited to get this thing in and hook it to my system. And I really think it's going to transform my digital side of my playback. And hopefully I'm going to get to the point where I can say that, yes, they're different but equal. Really good digital versus really good vinyl versus my really good tape output. And again, I played around trying to get really good tape output on the cheap, buying these Tascam decks and trying to DIY a preamp, which we're still working on that. But then I heard this Otari with a bottlehead preamp, and it was like, there we go. That's what it should sound like. And I think the point that I'm trying to make in this video is I feel like to really review and actually develop my amplifier products, I need a reference quality system. And that's going to be from the source all the way to the speakers. And I do have an announcement on some speakers. I'm going to save that to where they get here. But I think you're going to agree at the end of at least this round of upgrades, this is really going to be a reference level system that is going to be able to reproduce 20 hertz to 20K so that you can really hear everything that's in the source and coming out of the amplifier. We may be doing some tweaks to the amplifier to hear or improve the frequency response outside the range that the speakers that I've been using can reproduce. And I just feel this is a good thing. And I hope you guys don't feel like, oh, now Skekki's gone into this unobtainable range. And none of this stuff that I'm putting in my system right now, I feel like is in some kind of unobtainable range. I mean, yeah, $7,000 is a lot of money. And to some folks that may be unobtainable, but you have to realize that you're giving something up when you go to a lower tier product. And again, Rotel has some CD deck things that are less featured as far as like their ability to be used as different things, but they have the same chip in them. But you have to ask yourself, is a $3,000 implementation of this chipset going to sound the same as one that's at $7,000? And some of you may say it is, and it's just snake oil. I don't think it is. I've heard the two, and there is definitely something there. Also excited about knowing that I've got a world-class DAC that I can work on my streaming setup. I've talked to two different folks at the show that have two different kind of pathways to really get to high-end streaming, and we'll be going into that soon as I learn more about that. And those are actually fairly low-cost options where it does require a good DAC to get there. And so, again, I feel like on the digital side, the magic is in the DAC, and what you feed it with, while important, is not the main audible difference. And it's why they have this kind of DAC of the Year club. And there's videos about that stuff, how every year some DAC gets hyped up, and they're always around $1,000. These usually are these DACs that get hyped up as the newest, latest, greatest. And it has people just constantly every year spending $1,000 getting the upgrade, and then the DAC that was the previous flavor of the year becomes worth $200 because this other one is the one you want, and everybody buys this, and then 12 months later you're buying this, and then 12 months later you're buying this. And I watched the same thing happen in digital photography. And you guys that watch my channel a lot, you know I love analogies. My analogy for this is these prosumer digital cameras. Same thing. It's like, oh, you want this. You need this mirrorless. You need this got a faster autofocus. This has got eye autofocus. This has got, all this stuff. And years ago, I bought a Nikon D4, which is their professional level, got the best imaging sensor. They didn't put them in any other cameras. And I'm still using that camera today, decades later. I mean, that camera probably came out 20 years ago, or 15 anyway. And it was a big lift at the time. It was a $5,000 camera. But I've avoided buying a dozen $1,000 or $1,500 cameras between that time and now. And that camera was great when it came out. And it hasn't gotten any worse. It's still great. And it still does everything I need in a digital camera. And I'm going to play that same analogy forward in this Rotel Mishi CD DAC combo thing, that if this thing sounds as good as I know it does because I've heard it in person twice, I don't see ever replacing it. And yeah, maybe something in the future will be a slight improvement, but it's not going to be some light years better quality. And so I see this as an in-game, rest of my life purchase for this product. And the other thing that it's going to allow me to do is I want to develop a line of fully balanced differential tube amps and preamps. And I've talked with Holger at Earnhardt Audio. He's got a fully balanced preamp that he wants me to do a demo or a review on. And to really do justice with it, I need a fully balanced differential input. And that's not the same as some of these cheaper products that are doing XLR outs where they're just putting a single ended across the hot and cold. It's a fully differential from one end to the other. And so that's the kind of products that I want to do. And while I have been happy with these balancing transformer on the input of my single-ended 300B or 2A3 amp, that's my personal one, and I actually did that on the input of a color preamp that sounded really nice, I want to develop and figure out how to do a XLR only fully differential tube amp that is basically going to be a push-pull, and we're going to get more power without having to have the issues with introducing a phase splitter, because the phase is going to be split on the input. And don't want to get too deep into the tech on that, but to do that, I really needed a reference level differential input, or a device that had a fully differential output to be able to, test the circuitry and make sure this sounds like what I want. And I'm hoping to do, probably the first one is going to be an EL84, which I know is a great sounding tube. But the problem with EL84 amps is they're so low power that there's not a lot of use cases for them. And by doing this differential input push-pull, you could probably get 15, maybe more watts out of a pair of those tubes. And that's going to push what those amplifiers can be used for. And in a similar vein, hopefully be able to then move towards doing a fully differential 2A3 amp, 300B, and get the kind of power levels that you would get out of some kind of exotic tube like that 520B that's like way more expensive. And so that's kind of where I see all of this going. And while I feel like my single-ended amps are really nice sounding and, you know, in some ways are maybe a unique product, they're not that unique. And it's a lot of people out there building 300B amps, and you see all these options from these budget China ones up to, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 ones. But I feel like having a line of fully differential tube amps is going to be something unique, and hopefully is going to sound just out of this world good and develop power levels that aren't possible with just a strictly single-ended thing. So anyway, I know I haven't done a lot of content lately. As I mentioned in a previous video, I went through some honestly kind of mentally depressing medical issues, struggling with trying to find doctors that were willing to help me try to figure out what was going on. Past all that, I feel great, fully recovered, nice and healthy now. Unfortunately, I'm dealing now with some issues with Dolly. She's about probably 15 years old, and she's getting the whole old dog nearing the end of her life issues. And trying to stay positive about that, but also realizing that she's not going to be around forever, and trying to mentally prepare myself for the end of her life and all that means to my life, because she's, you know, like a family. Well, she is a family member, and you guys that own pets understand what I'm saying. So I'm trying to navigate all that stuff, trying to get caught up on the products that people have given me deposits on building. I've gotten behind in, you know, bench work, but I feel like now I'm in a better space mentally to get excited about building stuff again for customers. So I'm going to try to get some of those things knocked out, and then we're going to start doing some videos about this new process that I'm going to be working on, developing a differential tube amp. And I've got some schematics, I've got some ideas, I've got some kind of understanding of that. I do want to sit down and take some of these differential XLR output devices and hook a scope up and just kind of look at this output to try to help understand like what exactly they are and what the output looks like and how it's different from single-ended. Probably do some videos on that stuff and try to move things in kind of a different direction. And I hope I'm not leaving some of my audience behind. I'm still going to try to do some lower end, not going to say lower end, but just different amplifier DIY projects. And there's some other kind of simple stuff that I still want to do that I've got parts in here for. I've got all the stuff here to build that 520B amp, which honestly, that's not going to be a cheap deal either. But, you know, they've got years of videos showing doing like 2A3 single-ended amps and all that kind of stuff for you new viewers to watch, and or go back and look at that content if you're looking for some of the more basic kind of stuff. But I feel like for me to just keep doing that same thing over and over and over again, and I've had viewers complain about that, it's like all your amplifiers are kind of based on the same kind of topology, and you're just a different way of skinning a cat kind of a thing. And I feel the same way, that I need to like move forward in my journey to some more exotic stuff and really see what I can do with some more unique designed products. So I'm back. We're going to start doing a lot of videos. I got to do a video about Axpona. Going to do a review about that, the rooms I liked, We're not going to talk about the rooms I didn't like. So if you've got a favorite room and it's not featured, it's because I didn't think they hit the mark. There's some rooms in Tampa that made my top 5 list that did not make the top 5 or top 10 at Axpona. And so that's telling to me that maybe some of the parts of their system that I thought were what was making the great sound wasn't what was actually making the great sound. So that's going to be kind of a fun thing to talk about too. So anyway, I appreciate all you folks that are subscribers, Patreon supporters, and that you've been hanging in there while I've kind of taken a break, trying to gather myself up and figure out where I want to go with this. I'm excited about these new projects that I'm going to be working on, and I'm excited to be able to do something that I don't see a lot of people doing. And I think it could be an eye-opener how good going in this different direction sounds. But it could be a failure. I don't know. Don't know until you do it. But I do feel like now I'm going to have a reference level system that I'll be able to discern, yes, this sounds good, no, this doesn't, and figure out why. So I hope you'll continue watching or as excited as I am for the future of my channel and what we're going to be doing here. And until the next video, have a nice day.